So today we have a great interview with Aubrey Taylor. And Aubrey has been a realtor for 13 years and she's a broker. She's also an owner of a real estate company or part owner. She also does production coaching and is a fabulous person. And we are going to talk about her story. So let's get started.
Thanks,
Hi,
Tara.
Aubrey.
Hi.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know I gave them the highlights of your professional, but this is about you personally. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks. I am, yes, an entrepreneur, and from a familial status way, I have two sons. They're both just recently grown. The older one's a Marine, and the younger one just finished high school. So I'm now an empty nester.
Congratulations.
Anything. And I was married for 18 years, been divorced for 4. And so from that kind of standpoint, that's the gist there. Kind of in a transition right now with my career and my whole life and everything like that. So
that sounds good. Tell me a little bit about your story of religious abuse, of the challenges that you went through for 18 years. So let's start with your story, Aubrey.
Sure. Let's see. I grew up not religious at all. My parents were both from the Mormon church originally, but my dad was raised that way. My mom became that way, and then they both left when I was a baby, maybe 1 or 2. But I'd heard stories of it and how strict everything was and that kind of a thing, but I wasn't raised that way at all. It wasn't until college. I actually got involved with a gentleman who wanted to date, and ultimately this church he went to, you couldn't date anyone outside of the church. And so, long story short, there ended up coming to church, but it really wasn't. It was kind of because I liked this boy, right? And then kind of staying and studying with them and going to their events and all those kind of things that ended up getting baptized into that church and becoming a full-on member. We dated, but not in the church, not with anybody's blessing.
Okay.
And so I had to kind of like give him up in order to become a member of this church. Okay. So that was early 20s, maybe 2021, I would say. Then the church was, it was super intense. It was one of those where, it's every Sunday, every Wednesday. There were also all these different, Bible talks and different things like that throughout the week. Sometimes it was for occasionally 5 nights a week. We'd be doing church activities, which was a lot. So I was involved in the campus ministry, then the singles ministry. Ended up dating. You could only, like I said before, you could only date within the church. And because, I'll get back to the dating piece. The reason is because of being, evenly yoked with someone, and the beliefs of this church essentially was the only right church. And if you weren't a member of this church, you were going to go to hell. So we had to save everyone that wasn't a member of our church, which is most of the planet. So,
Yes.
Of course, we had a date within the church, and that's a small pool, especially when you live in Montana. Yeah, very small dating pool. Ended up, actually, I was at the mall one day, and there's this cute boy in the store working there. So I sent my friends in to invite him to church, and he ended up coming to church, studied the Bible with everybody, became a member of the church, and then we started dating. So that was kosher. That was okay.
Officially okay.
Yeah. So we started dating, and then a lot of people didn't even kiss until the altar. But they definitely did not have sex before marriage. Dating was essentially Saturday night's group dating situation, setup format. So there was no ever one-on-ones. If you ever saw your boyfriend outside of Saturday nights and church, it was considered a weasel date. Even if you were sitting next to them at church, people would be like, oh, I see you had a weasel date. Like trying to get any time outside of that Saturday night thing. Once you were closer to like engaged, then you were allowed to talk on the phone more often. You were allowed to like see each other a little bit more often. But it was kind of nuts. Like, how do you really get to know somebody in that type of setting? But essentially, it was to protect purity.
Oh, the big purity culture, it sounds like.
Huge purity culture, and then also to make sure that you were putting no idols above God, and that your relationship with God was the most important thing, not your relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend. But I think it really set a lot of people up for fantastic failure, and
Absolutely.
yeah. So we ended up, we were actually in ministry together. We both had jobs and everything like that, but we volunteered as campus ministry leaders, I think, or singles ministry leaders. I don't remember. So we were actually in a leadership position, and then we did end up sleeping together, and I got pregnant. Yeah, which was a scandal, an absolute scandal. It was horrible. It was horrible. So it was interesting how differently different people would treat us. It wasn't universal. I mean, some of it was profound judgment. Some of it was, you know, gosh, like, yeah, compassion, some of that, all of it. But yeah, we were called up in front of the whole congregation and had to confess. And I mean, we were kind of scarlet lettered for a long time. I think that honestly, the leadership at the time were doing the best they could. I don't think there was any like ill will or anything like that. I think they were doing the best they could. And I mean, what a bizarre situation for them.
Their rules and everything that they put to protect this.
Exactly. Exactly. So, you know what though? I wouldn't trade it. My oldest now, the one that's the Marine, that's Jacob. He's the sweetest. I'm just so glad to have him. And I remember even saying it at the time, like, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have this baby. I wouldn't be who I am now. We got married 3 months later. And we were married 18 years. We stayed at the church until we moved from one town to another for my husband's career, and there wasn't a proper church in that town, so it was a huge deal that we were going to leave the church and fall away from God, from everything, because we didn't have one of our churches there. So for years, we drove back 2 hours every week for church.
Wow. Okay.
And then we ended up just kind of fading away. But there's so many splits in the church, and people, we'd have to kind of essentially shun them. Anyone that left, we weren't allowed to speak to them anymore. I was terrified because my brother was a member of a church. I convinced him, like, I introduced him to the church, and I was terrified that he would be told not to talk to me anymore.
Oh, gosh.
That's just a part of it, but I don't know how long you want me to go on.
Yes. And then talk about how that transpired in your relationship, and then, the different challenges you were having there, and yet you felt very stuck.
Yeah. So I think just, my husband, he was 21 when we got married. I was 23. We had a baby a few months later. He left for overseas for the military for a year and a half. I think that, like, that's when the first affair started. I mean, it was just chronic affairs the whole time. I don't know that had anything to do with the church or not, but it was a thing. But it was also almost like we've caused enough drama and problems. Like, I didn't want to bring it up. Or I didn't want it to be like, well, if you hadn't had sex before you got married, your husband wouldn't be cheating on you. And I don't know that that's what anyone thought. That was the type of like, oh, I just got to keep my head down and be a good girl now.
So you didn't you knew about it, but you didn't necessarily have the support system or share it, or how did?
Yeah, I knew about it. Lots of them. Over time, but I didn't, like, we would get counseling and things like that. There were very few people in my life that knew about it. My family, I didn't tell. It really, no, I didn't tell anybody.
How did that affect you, holding that? I mean, that's a tough thing.
It was very lonely. I think I now have, and probably for other reasons too, I'm a recovering hyper-independent human being. I couldn't count on him. It wasn't just the affairs, and he wasn't a horrible person. We had a lot of fun times too. I mean, we have 2 great kids together, and it's not all bad. It just, I didn't feel like I had anyone to turn to. So it was very lonely. It was extremely judgmental community of people. And I don't think that at everyone's core they meant to be. It was just like we were primed and like trained to be like, uh, up in everybody's business all the time, and everything was judgy. And oh, are you like, I mean, you're always in sin, and you're always doing something you shouldn't be doing, and like always eyeballs in everything you're doing. It was extremely invasive.
Yes.
Um,
Which is very different than like, the God of love and him saying abundant life and freedom. So I'm hearing very much control and isolation and you having to kind of grin and bear some things, going through some really challenging things. And I don't think there's any relationship that doesn't have good times. It's more about what happens in the bad times. And like multiple affairs is very damaging, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and all of that. And that's a
yeah.
lot that you went through. Are you feeling stuck in with love, wealth, or peace? Well, you're not alone. Often it's a subconscious belief holding you back. That's why I combined life coaching and hypnotherapy together, so you can break through what's been keeping you stuck. Life coaching helps you shift your mindset, while hypnotherapy works deep within to reprogram limiting beliefs and memories. It's fast, it's effective, typically one session of each, and I have a few openings left. Are you ready for a change? Visit livebrighter.info and book your free consultation and see if this approach is right for you. See you then. When did you decide, or how did you decide to get out of that and break free from that?
The church or the marriage?
The marriage. Well, actually both.
The church ended up kind of naturally us being in that other town, and just kind of, I think, something. I mean, I would just put my head down, and you just were used to this certain way of life, and it just was what it was. This is what we do. But I started questioning it even before we left. I'm like, this isn't right. We got some new leadership in, and it was even more hyper controlling and like fantasy, almost like making things up or turning things into some personal attacks on the leadership, especially the wife. She wanted to drag everything up out of me again and put me back up for scrutiny in front of everyone, even though it had happened like 8 years earlier. I'm like, dude, like, get over it. I mean, isn't there this forgiveness thing? I don't owe you an explanation. That was really hard. And then she kind of picked on me. No, she didn't kind of. She did pick on me because I didn't yield to like her wanting to, re-letter me essentially.
Wow.
So I started feeling kind of junky about that. And then with all the splits, it just kept, and everyone was called divisive. And it was this, if you left or questioned anything, you were called divisive, and then everyone had to shun you. And the female leader especially took it as anytime anybody said anything that they were personally attacking her. It was incredibly horrible. She came at me several times and, pulled me in front of everybody and admonished me and did all these things. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Ultimately, we ended up just kind of being like, we can't do this anymore. There was one more division of the church, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. So we just stopped going. And then we did get shunned, but not by my brother. So I'm grateful for that.
Good. Yes.
Yeah. And then the marriage, I decided 4 years ago to leave that. I thought I can make it till my kids are adults. I can make it till 2025. I could do this. I've done it this long. And I ended up I was in counseling, and she was like, Aubrey, what are you doing? She's like, you have no idea how many young people sit on that couch. And once they've found out that one or both of their spouses stayed, even though they're miserable or being mistreated, because of the parent guilt or whatever, they end up sitting there, and then they're traumatized.
Yes.
And then they have their own
stuff. They are wiring our kids for love and and what love is and what relationships are. And yeah.
So I kind of gave him the news, but it was also in light of another affair. It was kind of easy. I mean, he's now married to her, and it's like, okay. Like, once I made the decision, it was pretty quick. And, we were divorced within 6 weeks. And, we had an amicable enough divorce and things like that for the sake of the kids and just for ourselves too. But yeah, so that was 4 years ago.
Wow.
I think I've had enough. Yeah.
How did you recover and learn to thrive after that whole situation? That's years and years of control and this of the church and then affairs. And that's a lot, Aubrey. How did you
Yeah.
learn to thrive and how did you heal?
I ended up, so we got divorced like it would have been September 4 years ago. That early December, I found a, I don't remember how it came up, but a specific coaching therapy program. It was online. It's a 6-month program specific to betrayal. And, they talk about how, there's so many things that are traumas, but a lot of traumas are just, they are what they are. Betrayal feels like a very intentional trauma. Um, so I was in like a 6 month, super intense. I remember starting December 9th, and I remember every ninth of the month I would celebrate being 1 month closer. And I told the gal at the beginning, the doctor, that I don't care what it takes. I want to feel better by summer. I will do everything you tell me. Frankly, I was ready to pay her whatever she wanted. I said, fix it. I will be your best patient ever. And I know, and I was like, this isn't just like, I want to be perfect immediately and I don't want to have to do anything. I was like, I will do the work, but I want to be on your fast track because I want the rest of my life because I wasted enough time now. So it was amazing how much it progressed in just 6 months. I mean, even after 3 months, I felt, so much better, but there was work every day. And there's, of course, been a lot since, but it was definitely a huge jump start.
What did you want to get and what did you get out of that program? You sound like you really knew what you needed and you weren't going to continue. So tell me more about that.
Primarily forgiveness, not just for my husband, but for past versions of myself who didn't do anything. Who did? She did the best she could with what she had in it, all of that. But I was angry with her for not leaving sooner. And I'm just feeling emotional about it now because I just feel so sorry for her. Like it was awful,
I
But
get that.
yeah, being able to forgive her, forgive my husband, and just honestly to set myself free from it, and just a completely different person.
Aubrey, that's amazing. How did that situation when you were in it? Because we all have to, like buffer or cope somehow. A lot of times they aren't. It's what we need at the time, sort of thing, but it's not very helpful. What did you find that you were like? How are you trying to cope with all that during it?
Pretty driven person. So once I found my real estate career, a lot of this happened when I was a stay-at-home mom in my 20s. I had a career, then I stayed home for 4 years, 3.5 years, which was so wonderful. Then when we moved, that's when I got into real estate. So I don't think I'm a workaholic, but I'm definitely a perfectionist. So a lot of perfectionism, like having the best dinner parties and being the best wife and being the best like mom and all of those things. And in my career, even being in real estate, though, I definitely limited my time at work because of my kids. I didn't want to be working every evening and weekend. That's a whole separate discussion. So it wasn't like that kind, but I definitely distracted myself and fell into lots of perfectionism.
How do you look at that now, the perfectionism? Those things all serve us for a time, like when we're trying to deal with stuff, but how do you look at it now?
I still struggle with it, honestly. I think it's in there.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a lot better. As I mentioned earlier, too, kind of being the hyper independent person, just because I couldn't count on my husband. I couldn't count on my church. I was embarrassed to tell my family. They would have 100% supported me. But I was embarrassed and also it's like, well, then I don't have a perfect little life anymore. If people find out my husband's been betraying me my entire marriage. And there was so much more than affairs. It was awful. He didn't beat me or anything.
Well, there was a lot of emotional.
There was a lot of
and psychological stuff going on there.
Yeah, and just kind of abandoned me. I was the loneliest married woman.
Yeah.
So lonely.
Yes. That is, that was really brave of you to get out and even braver to do that healing journey. And it's still a journey, as we all know. So what did you learn from it? Or what's something like you would like to let people know? If they're resonating with this story of religious abuse, of affairs, what would you tell them or tell your younger version?
What a great question. I have a couple things I want to say. I would say Earlier I kind of mentioned like having blinders on and just this is how it is. This is life I've chosen. And then you just become so familiar that it feels normal. And so to sometimes like look up and be like, and question things, is this working? Is this quote unquote normal? Am I just like going with the flow? I mean, we get this one beautiful life. Am I just going with this because it's just the life I chose and I have to stay? Because I did feel very stuck. Especially once I started being successful in my career, I felt very stuck. Believe it or not, which sounds strange because then I had money. But there's just so much more to it than that. But I will say one thing too that really helped me was I remember printing a picture of myself as a little girl, just one of my little school pictures. My hair was just a wreck. And I had this little dress with a little ribbon bow tie thing. And it was cattywampus and definitely not perfect. And I remember looking at her and being like, oh, sweetheart, if I had to look her in the face right now and say, honey, this is the life like that I've created for you. This is what you have to look forward to. I would have been devastated to tell her that. It was horrible. And to have to watch her face, like, guess what's in store for you? And then also, I then imagined myself as like an 80-year-old woman. What would she say to me? And those two forces in my life helped me a lot. But I had a little picture in my desk drawer, and then I had one on my bedside table. And I was like, I have to do right by her. So that definitely helped pull me out of like the rut.
Mm-hmm. That's very powerful. So, what does your life look like now? And just like, what do you do to just live brighter every day? I know, that's a huge part of being growth mindset. And how do you do that? What does that look like?
I smile a lot more now. There's times I just find myself, I'm just randomly sitting in my car or doing mundane things around the house, like cooking or just living my life, and I just find myself smiling. And when that happens, I'm like, life is pretty good, even the simplest things in my life. I also surround myself, I have great friends. I now have an amazing support system, so I know that I can go to people that that I trust and that love me and that I know have my best interest in mind as well, and vice versa. I explore a lot more. I try new things. I just moved back to the city that I'd moved away from. So it's my home and I love it. And I also, like, instead of getting up and doing all the things every day, I get up and I have slow mornings and I actually drink my coffee and stare at the wall sometimes. I just think, and I realize that's a privilege to get to do that because I don't have to be to work and get my kids going and have to be to work by 7:45 or 8 a.m. every day. And I've done that. So I've designed my life for that. I go on walks. I'm a lot more open now, but I still have so much work to do. I will for the rest of my life. I don't know.
We all do. That's why it's a journey. But it sounds like it's very like peaceful and that you're very much at peace with yourself and you've got joy and it sounds intentional and beautiful. Nice work, Aubrey.
Yeah, thanks.
And what are you looking forward to in the future? We'll end with that because you've got some really cool things you're looking forward to coming up, and it's great to share that.
Yeah. So I decided years ago, when I got into real estate 13 years ago, I was like, all right, I feel like I'm going to be really good at this. And I had all these big goals, and I knew I was going to be an empty nester this year. So I built this whole big plan, worked my tail off, and I'm here, and I hit my goals. And one of my rewards for that is I'm calling it, I haven't decided if I'm going to call it a sabbatical or a gap year. But my grown-up gap year, 45 years old, is to go to Europe. I'm starting it with going to Europe. I leave in a few days, and I'm going for at least a month. I'm calling it my 4 to 8 week trip. I don't know how long I want to stay, but I've designed it all so that with my career, with my family, with everything, I can go do that. And really being open to new, potentially business opportunities, or what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Do I want to stay in real estate like in the capacity I'm now? I've thought about doing super cool like tour kind of getaways for women over to Europe that are similar to me, that have maybe been through some things or maybe living in that rat race life right now, that I could take care of them, make them feel special, and that they have a community of women they can get to know. I don't totally know, but that's it's very weird for me to feel okay with and excited about not knowing right now. So that's how I know I'm growing. Because usually I'm very, like I said, very driven. I have a plan. It's written down. I have everything organized. And so it'd be like, I know that I'm flying into Paris for 5 days, and that's it.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Aubrey. Thanks for taking this time. Is there anything lastly that you want to just bring up? Open mic.
I don't know. I do know that I might have said this to you before, but I know that this, especially the religious trauma, is still in there. I've dealt with a lot of the marriage stuff. I know that it's the work I have to do eventually, and ironically, it was from the pulpit that I heard this, where they said, imagine being in like a motorcycle accident and you don't have all your protective gear on, and you get just road rashed, right? And you can't just leave all that gravel in there. It'll heal, but it'll probably get infected and all those kind of things. Like, it's easiest to do it at the beginning, even though it's gonna really hurt. It's even harder after you've like scabbed up, and a couple days later the inflammation's down, things like that. I've let it totally scar over, so I know that gravel's in there and it's a total scar. So I know eventually I'm gonna have to rip it out, and it's gonna it's definitely gonna hurt. But I know in order to like really heal from it, I'm gonna have to do that work, and I just haven't faced it yet. So, yeah. But it's always helped me to kind of have that little analogy of the motorcycle, the road rash, and it's helped me deal with things in this version of my adult life a lot faster, so that I don't get the scars like I know I have from that.
That's a good story, and that's very brave of you to know what your next steps are, and I'm impressed. So thanks, Aubrey. Take care.
Thanks.
Have a great trip.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay tuned for our next episode.